Okay, get ready. I have just shared three type of documents with you via email. One is this, the IG2 risk assessment guidance and information for learners and learning partner. And the other one is the example report produced by NIBOSH. And the other, the Word document, it is for you to work on your risk assessment. So the risk assessment has four parts. Let me explain how does this work. These are the stages of the risk assessment: description of the organization and methodology used, and risk assessment in part 3 prioritize 3 actions with justification, and then review, communicate, and check. Okay. Based on this guidance document, NIPOSH has also produced an example risk assessment, which is already sent to you via email. When you work on your risk assessment, you can refer to the example report if your idea is not clear about any section. So the section 1, like you should include the following information in description. I mean the part 1: name of the organization, site location, and how many workers are employed by the organization, the general description of the organization, which must include information on product manufactured or services provided, the type of activities undertaken, and shift pattern worked, and a description of the area to be included in the risk assessment, and any other relevant information like who has the day-to-day responsibility for health and safety in your organization. So now we can see all these 6 requirements in the example report. So this is the example report you can see on your screen. In part 1, background. In background, like you can see, it's a tailor-made format in front of you. So NIBOSH expect you that you should complete this section in 150 to 200 words, not less than 150 words, not more than 200 words. So name of the organization, like in the example report, you can see the name of the organization like International General Garage Limited, or known as IGG Limited. Site location is a made UP country. Like site location, you can write that Jakarta, Indonesia, Balikpapan, Indonesia, or whatever you are located in, your company is located in. So you can write the site location in front of the here. You can see the mouse cursor. And number of workers, how many employees are working in your company, you need to write this information here. Next is the general description of the organization. Just look at very carefully on this example report. IGG Limited is a medium-sized garage with offices, vehicle repair shop, including store area and paint spray booth. It is family owned and does not have any other branches. The business does a lot of repairs and maintenance on vans, lorries, and body repairs for insurance companies on cars that have been involved in accidents. Servicing is also carried out for members of the public. Typical activities undertaken including moving spare parts from the store to the workshop, engine repairs, activities relating to servicing, body repair, draining fuel, oil, spray booth activities, including the use of paints that are solvent based. The garage operates from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekday and is closed at the weekends. Workers are only required to work 7 hours per day, so there are staggered start and finish times in place. Okay, and description of the area to be included in the risk assessment, like what will you cover in your risk assessment? I mean the whole site or some parts of the site you must mention here. The risk assessment will cover the garage, that includes the storage area and spray booth activities. The office area has a separate risk assessment. And in the final part, in this background information, any other relevant information in front of any other relevant information, you need to mention who has the health and safety responsibilities, like the finance director who reports directly to the managing director has direct responsibility for health and safety. Now, if we look back at the guidance document for the IG2, the name of the organization is already covered here. They here. Okay. Now, the site location like New Delhi, India or Jakarta, Indonesia, you can write it here. Next, the third number information is how many workers are employed. So you have already written 24 in the example report. And now you are asked the general description of the area, which must include, you can say this word must. It means you have no choice. You must include these information in the general description. What type of information are asked? Product manufactured or services provided. As you can see in the example report, that this business, what services they provide: repairs and maintenance on vans, lorry, and body repairs for insurance companies on cars that have been involved in accident. Okay, and servicing is also carried out for members of the public. So this company provide the repairing and maintenance services on cars. Next type of information is required: the type of activities. What type of activities were undertaken when you were carrying out risk assessment? So the typical activities undertaken include moving spare parts from the stores to the workshop, engine repairs, activities relating to servicing, body repair, draining fuel oil, and spray booth activities. So these were the activities undertaken. And shift pattern, you can see the garage operate from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It means this company only operates in one shift. Okay. Workers are only required 7 hours per day. So there are staggered start and finish time in place. And next information is required: the description of the area to be included in the risk assessment. This is the description of the area. The risk assessment will cover the garage and spray booth. Suppose if you want to complete your risk assessment on your organization, you must clear the description of the area to be included in the risk assessment. Suppose a welding shop or a mechanic shop or a reception area or the administrative block or whatever you want to include in your risk assessment, you must mention them here. And in the last part, a description of the area to be included, any other relevant information like who has the day-to-day responsibility for health and safety in your organization. And you can see that the finance director, who reportedly directly to managing director, has direct responsibility for health and safety. So all this information must be completed within 150 to 200 words. Can you please quickly confirm if this is clear to you? Can you please quickly confirm if this is clear to you?
Yeah, it's clear for me.
Okay. So the background information is still continue. Like in this part, you should aim to complete this section in 100 to 200 words. Like outline how the risk assessment was carried out This should include sources of information consulted, who you spoke to, and how you identified the hazards, what is already being done, and any additional control actions that may be required. This list is very, very clear, like what information are required in this section. You can see what type of information are required from you, sources of information you used or you consulted for your risk assessment, who you spoke to when you were carrying risk assessment, and how you identified the hazards, how you identify what is already being done, and how you identify any additional controls or action that may be required. Now look at very carefully in the example report. I started by looking to see if the ILO had any codes of practice relating to garage work, which there wasn't. The British HSE website had lots of resources, for example, health and safety in motor vehicle repair and associated industries, HSG 261. They have not only provided the documents link, but document name, but also you can see the link is there. The HSE HSD 261 link is here, was a good source of information. Remember, you are only allowed to produce two type of references, one from ILO, if like you are carrying out risk assessment on an oil and gas organization, but you cannot find any information about the oil and gas organization on the ILO website, but you can find the same information on the HSE website. So you must mention that these information I consulted exist on the HSE website. Okay. If you find anything related information on the ILO website, so you must give priority to the ILO website or the ILO. If you cannot find anything on the ILO website, then you will try to search on the HSE website. Okay. So after looking at sources of information, I then went around the workshop and talked to the people who were doing the job. This helped me to identify the hazards that were present along with any control measures in place. It also allowed me to assess whether the current controls were adequate. The workers that I spoke to gave me information that wasn't obvious from just a visual inspection. For example, a lot of the workers didn't know that there were dust masks available or the reasons why these should be worn. I also checked the accident book to see what types of incidents had occurred over the last 12 months and whether any of these incidents were recurring. I also checked the reason for sick absence, again to see if there were any recurring themes for ill health. Following the inspection, I referred back to the notes that I made during the inspection and the sources of information that I had already reviewed to help me to decide on any additional control measures or action that were needed. So now you can see what type of information are required from you. Sources of information consulted. ILO and HSE website are the sources of information you should consult in your IG2 risk assessment. Okay. Who you spoke to. Okay. I then went around the workshop and talked to the people who were doing the job. So the person who was carrying out risk assessment, he spoke to the workers who were doing the job. How you identified the hazards. So I also checked the accident. Okay. I also checked the reason for 6 absent against. Following the inspection, I referred back to the notes that I made during the inspection and the sources of information that I had already reviewed to help me to decide on any additional control measure or action that were required. How you identified the hazard? By talking to worker or by visiting the site. What are company already doing? This is you came to know from your workers and visual inspection and the additional control, how you put the additional control by referring to your notes during inspection and the sources of information. So is that clear to you? Is it clear, please?
Yes, 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 please.
Okay. So here in the, you can see in the bottom, you should enter your learner number and here your full name. This is basically a footer in the Word document. When you enter your learner number and your name, it will appear on every page. So part two, risk assessment. In part two, normally you need to repeat your company name, organization name again here, and date of assessment. The date of assessment is from today, like from 11 June, because yesterday was your paper. So from 11 June until 20th June, you can write any date for your risk assessment. It's up to you. And the scope of the risk assessment, which area you have risk assessed, you need to write here. Like in this example report, you can see workshop, stores, and spray booth. So it means when you write the workshop, stores, and spray booth here, it means that you have carried out risk assessment in the workshop. You have also carried out risk assessment in the stores and spray booth. Okay, now this is the risk assessment format. As you can see, this one, like in IG1, you have already covered that there are 5 steps to risk assessment. So the 5 steps are: what are the hazards, and then who might be harmed and how, what are you already doing, what further controls are needed, and who is responsible and reviewing. So these are the 5 steps to risk assessment. Like you can see, this is very important section. You need to understand this for the risk assessment. In the guidance document, you can clearly see that in the risk assessment part, you are required to produce 10 different hazards, not same hazards. As you can see very clearly, 10 different hazards from 5 different hazard categories. If you are not sure about the hazard categories, I can explain it for you. Like in IG2 book, from element 5 to element 11, every topic is a hazard category in your IG2 book. Like you can see in element 5, noise is a hazard category, vibration is a hazard category, radiation, mental ill health, violence at work, substance abuse at work, all these are hazard categories in element 5. While in element 6, work related upper limb disorders, ergonomics, workstation design, etc., manual handling, load handling equipment, these are the hazard categories in element 6. While in element 7, hazardous substances, either chemical or biological, these are the hazard categories. In element 8, health, welfare, and work environment, working at height, confined spaces, lone working, slips and trips, movement of people and vehicles in the workplace, work-related driving. In element 9, work equipment and machinery. In element 10, fire. And element 11, electricity. As you can see, there are plenty of hazards categories you can take from your IG2 book syllabus. Okay, so you are required to produce only 5 different hazard categories. Suppose in a general general workplace, there is noise, vibration, or maybe substance misuse at work, or violence at work, or manual handling, hazardous substances, slip, trips, and falls, movement of people and vehicle, work-related driving, work equipment and machinery, fire and electricity. So you can see that they are more than 5 different hazard categories. Is that clear to you? Is it clear?
Yes, but I
Okay. So you need to produce 5 different hazard categories, and in every hazard category, you need to produce two different hazards. So 5 different hazard categories mean there will be 10 different hazards. For each hazard category, you need to identify 2 hazards. Okay. Now go back to the example report like this. Hazardous substances is the hazard category, while dust is the hazard. But you should not write only dust. You must explain this hazard, like how you can see in the example report dust. High concentrations of processed dust in the air. So who might be harmed? All workers, customers, and other visiting the organization. And how they might be harmed? This is you can see in well detailed explanation. High concentration of processed dust are always present from the routine and frequent activities being carried out. Since there is no dust extraction, only dilution ventilation is currently being used. People are breathing in hazardous dust particles. This can cause anything from short-term acute occupational asthma to long-term chronic occupational cancers, respiratory health conditions. People can also get the dust on their skin, which can cause dermatitis in their eyes, causing eye irritation and damage, or even accidentally swallow it. Now, what are you already doing and what further control actions are required? This is very technical. Just focus on this very well so that you can understand. As you can see, there is only one control available in the what are you already doing. You can see only one control measure is available. But in further control, you can see there are 14 control measures are available. Okay. So what I want to suggest you, suppose if you write 10 control measures in this column, what are you already doing in this column? So you need to produce only 5 control measures in this column. Suppose if you have 2 or 3 control measures in this column, then you need to produce 10 to 12 control measure in this column. Are you getting me? Are you getting me?
please repeat, sir.
Suppose if you have less number of controls in this column, it means you need more control measures in this column. Okay. But if you have more control measures in this column, then it means you need to produce less control measures in this column. Suppose if you have only one or two like this is here is only one control measure available, but you can see the further control measures are 14. So suppose if 14 control measures are available here, it means you only produce only one control measure here. Is that clear?
Yeah, clear.
Clear.
So the comparison is about 1 to 10 control action.
This is not fixed. Yeah, but suppose here are only three controls, it means you can produce 10 here. If there are
Mm,
six controls here, you can produce five here.
okay,
Okay.
okay,
Okay, so you need to produce the time scale for the further control measures, and then the responsible person's title, like workshop manager or site in charge or a supervisor or a safety advisor or whoever is the responsible person like this. Like you can see the hazardous substances is the hazard category and dust is the hazard. Now we can look for again you can see the hazard category. Hazardous substance is the hazard category, and use of motor oil and fuel is the hazard. So you need to produce five hazard categories, and every hazard categories you need to produce two hazards. So five different hazard categories mean you need to produce maximum 10 hazards. So when you complete this section, these two section,